This is Eric Alexander, Six Arrows Consulting, and I'm excited to have today for our conversation Martha Bartlett Piland. And hey, say hello to Martha.
Good morning.
Anything, anything you want to say just to get us kicked off?
Well, I'm really glad to be here with you, Eric. Thank you for the invitation. Um, I'm excited to have a good conversation.
Great. Thanks for making time for this. Let me tell everybody how we connected. I think you made contact with me after you heard me on a podcast or a webinar. I don't remember exactly which. And so we spent a little time getting acquainted. And then I may have also seen you at a banking conference. I don't remember, but one of the things along the way I learned about Martha, and her focus is marketing, and especially for financial institutions, is what she's focusing on. They're helping them with their branding. And if you want to learn more about her website, I love this name, Banktastic. You can go check that out. And then also, she's got a book that came out this year. Don't just brand there, do something. I love that title, Martha. And it came in when it came in a couple months ago before bedtime. I had it halfway read. And I'm not in a bank anymore. And I've never really been in the marketing world until my own endeavor. But I picked up lots of things here that are even practical for me in what I'm doing here. So thank you for making time for this today.
My pleasure, and I'm glad you read the book because even though it's really focused on marketers and branders, really brand needs to permeate everything in your institution. And so I think everybody can find some good takeaways into strengthening their brand
Well,
by
I
reading.
definitely did. And I'm fortunate to have worked at a bank that had a really strong brand. And so a lot of what you talked about in the book, and I got half of it read that evening and wrapped the rest of it pretty soon thereafter. But I could see how the bank I'd been in had lived a lot of those principles. And so it was interesting to see it articulated. One of the things that really stood out to me is you were talking about regularly, you talk about brand as it relates to the customers, but also making sure that was consistent with how things were looking inside with the employees, which leads me up to first question I want to ask you, which is about communication as it relates to culture. In a bank that's wanting to strengthen and foster its culture, what part does communication, internal and external, play in that?
Communications are vital, and I believe that we should always start with those internal communications first before we start broadcasting out to the world what we want them to hear. And if we don't communicate, then nature abhors a vacuum. So
Mm,
if we don't communicate, then people are going to make assumptions or make up their own stories, and the real issues might be overlooked or missed.
Can I make a comment on that? I think it
Yes.
was Brene Brown who said something very similar about that, related to a vacuum, particularly in the middle of a big change. If there's major change going on and there's a vacuum of information from the leadership team, people will make up their own narratives and typically assume the worst.
Yes, I agree. They do. And I think part of the problem is leadership has that curse of knowledge. They
Mm,
are thinking about these things all the time. They're thinking about the business. They're thinking about strategies, and they assume because they are just breathing this
hmm
and thinking about it all the time that other people know what's on their minds, and they don't. So,
mm,
an intentional internal communication strategy really helps build some very important things. It helps employees understand what's the purpose of the organization. It reminds them what's our mission and what's our vision. It helps them think about how they have an important role in helping move that forward. And I think it gives them some personal satisfaction that they've got an important job to do. It's not just um, serving this customer, it's not just running these reports, but it's really contributing to the advancement of our mission and purpose. And that's
mm.
powerful.
And how the serving the customer and the running the reports connects back to why are we here?
Why
What's
are we here?
important to us?
Absolutely. And I think especially there's always a challenge for great talent.
Mm,
Everybody wants to recruit and retain the best. And as we think about our future workforce, millennials and Gen Z really want to be connected to a company that they believe in and shares their purpose. So
Mhm.
it's even more important that we have those internal communications. Of course, the people that we have already here are important too. They're vital. They've got all this institutional knowledge. They're valuable. But if we don't tell people why we're here and what we're doing. And perhaps if we are growing or we're changing or we're acquiring, we've got to make sure people know we can bring them along and make them feel safe and comfortable and valued.
So you talked a little bit about some of the content of that, our purpose, our mission. Talk a little bit about channels, some of the maybe some of the format that those conversations in the communication could take internally.
You cannot communicate enough.
Hmm.
So
Should I just, is
sometimes
it,
people
if I
think,
put it on the wall in the break room, am I done?
no, you're not done if you just put it on the wall in the break room. Again, there's that curse of knowledge. So sometimes leadership thinks, oh, well, I've told them this or I've put this in the newsletter. But people, um, people take communication differently in different ways,
Mhm.
and we need to meet them where they are. So it should be in the break room. It should be on our intranet. It should be, um, in that internal newsletter. But I believe it's also really important that there's conversation both from the top and then at individual meetings. And sometimes we advise clients to think about starting our meeting with a mission moment
Hmm.
before we just launch into what we're doing in this meeting. We might relate a story. This is how we lived out our mission and made a difference for this customer last week. Or
Mhm.
this is a referral we received from a customer because this is how we served them. So if we establish this idea that we're always sharing our mission, always communicating, then that's going to be assimilated much more readily because it becomes sort of baked into our culture.
And the stories make it less abstract. If on the
Yes,
wall it says customer service, that's one thing. But if a colleague is telling a story about what that looked like, that's different. I can relate to that in a different way.
stories are memorable. The human brains are made to remember stories,
Hmm.
and a lot of stories are emotional. And
Mm.
so if we want to connect emotionally to our employees and our customers, and I believe we do, then those stories help that be more effective.
That's good. Other thoughts on this?
I made a couple notes for myself. Sometimes I think that people forget that those communications and that purpose and story also need to be into sort of those run-of-the-mill communications. When
Mm.
we have a job posting, are we talking about our mission and purpose? When we are doing employee evaluations, have we brought mission and purpose into that conversation? Are we helping employees also feel like they're involved with it personally? So, for example, if part of our purpose as an institution is to help our customers be more financially successful, are we doing that for our employees too?
Oh,
And
hmm.
if we are, how are we doing that?
Mm. Hmm.
So, those are things that really can set an organization apart if they're intentionally thinking about those things and communicating them in those ways that we already have as vehicles. You asked about channels, what channels we use. All of those are channels, and
Hmm.
we could take advantage of those.
What about, we've been focusing on the internal here, and on the branding, it seems like there's more of a focus externally. On culture, it's more internal, maybe. But I think it washes back and forth each direction. Talk just a little bit about communication and how it relates to culture as we're communicating with external parties.
Um, I think culture and brand are a little bit different, internal
Hmm.
brand and internal culture.
Agreed.
Sometimes culture is that camaraderie we feel or the way we do things, and our internal brand is our promise. to our customer or to our employees who are also customers,
Mhm.
and how we live that out. So both of those things are really important. Um, and then when we have that really well established, when we make that brand promise externally to external customers, prospects, and suppliers,
Mm,
then every single time they have an engagement with us, the brand promise is real and it's authentic and it's almost palpable. And that's what we really want for our
mm.
brand. It can't just
Right,
be a slogan on the wall
right.
that we say to our customers, and it can't just be a slogan on the wall that we say to our employees. So when we really marry those things together,
Mm.
that's when the magic happens. That's when you really have something different and special that people notice.
That's good. And I've experienced that where I've worked in the bank I was in. And of course, they're not the same culture and brand, but if they're incompatible or if there's dissonance, then we've got an issue. But like you said, when they're married and they're both robust, that's a neat thing.
Well, let me give you an example. I was interviewing a financial services provider last week, and as somebody who might do some work for us. And I said to them, I saw your advertising, and I think it says something about XYZ. And so, how does that relate to the work that we might do together? And that person was speechless,
Uh-oh.
speechless. So that means there was definitely a communication breakdown
Mhm.
internally, and that while there are some people putting that message out there to prospective clients, they've they've somehow failed in their communications to employees to say, this is what we're telling people, and this is why, and this is how you help do that.
Mhm.
I, I think that's an example that maybe some others who are watching this might be able to pinpoint and say, oh yes, I've had that too.
Good. I'd like to pivot if I could. We could stay here a long time, but I want to respect your time and everybody else's time. I want to go to communication as it relates to leaders and their stewardship responsibilities. Can you talk about that a little bit? And then I've got an observation about our respective backgrounds here on the screen that we'll talk about before we wrap up. Go ahead.
Well, I think all of us are stewards of the the work that we do for our company. That's very important. We're not just robots. We I think we have an obligation to um, take good care of our colleagues, take good care of this company that we work for, and take good care of our customers and clients. In leadership, I think that stewardship responsibility is even greater
Mhm.
because they are the ones really driving the direction of of the company. And so I think that's really important that they think of it that way, that I care and I contribute, and I am also hopefully planting really important seeds that are going
Mhm.
to grow into even more important things for my employees, my shareholders, and my customers.
It's interesting you're using that agricultural metaphor there because I believe stewardship leadership is organic and cultivating. And so how does communication fit into that briefly?
Again, if we have that curse of knowledge, we overlook the fact that
Mm.
people don't know that this is how we feel and this is where we're going and why they're important, then it's harder to have those relationships internally that also help grow our business.
So you've used that phrase curse of knowledge. I can't recall that I've heard that before, but that's fascinating. And what I'm picking up is I have something going on inside my head that's important and relevant and would contribute to fruitfulness that I'm not being diligent about making sure other people are hearing. Uh, Things, my intent, my assumptions, my direction as a leader. So that idea of if I'm picking up on it right, I need to make sure I'm verbalizing these things or communicating them in some way where it's not just in my head. Am I interpreting that right?
Yes, I think that's very, very good interpretation. And the other thing I would add to that is communication is two-way.
Right.
So we need to be listening also. And leaders should be asking questions of
Good.
the other people on their team and trying to have some conversations, not just broadcasting out, this is what's on my mind.
That's good. Okay. I, we so much here we could keep diving into. Uh, I want to make an observation though about our respective backgrounds. All right, I'm a finance person, a stinking accountant. You're a marketing person. I'm just you're. It seems like you're the background on the screen here is more bubbly and vibrant and exciting. Mine's a little more staid and formal and stiff, maybe, which reflects I'm from a different background. You're from a different background, but both of us, regardless of where we are in the organizations, we're part of this. We're part of the culture. We have influence to an extent, depending on our role on brand, but we all definitely are involved in communication. So it's not just for you marketing folks. We stinking accountants are part of it too.
Absolutely. Everybody's a part of it. And although we think in different ways and we have different roles, there are also things that we share. And so finding those things that we can share and enjoy together, and then also listening to different perspectives is what makes us really strong.
That's good. Wow. Lots more we could probably spend time on here, but Martha, thanks so much for this. Everybody else, thanks for listening. Lots of good stuff here to think about. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me along.